Hello. Well, we're gonna get back to doing some actual work today. And basically what it looks like that I've got to do at the moment is just to get Bitey hooked up so we can actually use him in the game. Because right now we don't really have much going on for Bitey. Basically he looks like this, and I think his collision is all sorts of messed up. Yeah, he's not a playable character yet, so we're gonna have to make sure he's got all the right stuff hooked up. It's gonna be some pretty tedious stuff, I think, and then we'll hopefully get him running around the game. Hello, Caracan. Thanks for joining. I assume you've got me and Adam at the same time. And hopefully, we'll be working at different ends of the project. Go ahead and clean up a little bit of old stuff that we're not using. Very good. Yeah, it looks like he actually went in there and made a whole bunch of stuff, which is pretty cool. We haven't been able to actually do anything like that until just yesterday, I guess. So let me just take a look here. 860 by 540. We'll see if this actually works properly for all the things. Like, you can see Adam's got Bitey crawling off from off screen. This sprite is just not going to work, right? Like, because when we export, it's going to get chopped off. So I'm going to have to take a few notes here so I can tell Adam what he needs to fix. Fighting some sprites into submission. Yeah, he's going to be doing a lot of that. I think that's going to be a lot of the project. So I'll be keeping a few notes for Bitey Harmony file. One of which is, let's see, which animation is this anyway? It's the climb E. Climb E is cut off on the bottom of the screen. Well, yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff there that's kind of messed up. Like, you see the background is kind of clip in with every other pixel, and looks like he's having some trouble getting, the kind of the scaffolding of the level put together. I think he was talking about snapping pieces of terrain onto each other and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's pretty much like stage 1 is figure out what we need to do to build the levels, and kind of stage 2 is build the tools to make it so building the levels is not just an awful tedious process. Yeah, and right now pretty much the only way to snap them together would be to change that Unreal step setting up here for translation and for all that. You see there's surface snapping, and I think there's other snapping to the grid. So we'd want to make all the pieces on the map all end in 100 units or something like that, and then we just have our snap settings so when we move stuff around that you know, we're all snapping to the grid, and that way, you know, it just all snaps together properly. That's probably what we'll do, because we don't have like a tools team to make a whole bunch of crazy stuff for us. So we'll probably just try to rely on with what Unreal has on its own. Let's take a look at how many animations Bitey even has here. He's got a few, you know. So what we need to do is we're gonna spend like a long amount of time going through every single one of these animations, and we're gonna make sure that the rigging is proper. So let's get started, because it's gonna take a while. We should start with probably the stationary idle and figure out what bounding box works best for that. And then we're going to go through and make sure that everything works proper. So we're looking for S idle. And holy shit, these things are not alphabetical, which sucks. The grind is real, but I mean, it's not a bad grind. The walk idle? That might be somewhere we can actually start. Frame 64. This is what he looks like. You can tell it's Adam's artwork, that's for sure. So let's see, where's our pivot? Our pivot is not really at a great spot. Like, what we want with these coordinates is we want them in places that are whole numbers, or at least close. You know, like instead of a 5.803, it should be like at least like 6 or something like that would be a better pivot. Just because whole numbers easier to keep track of everything working properly. Because the main thing is, like, let's see, if we want to move the pivot somewhere else for an animation, we need to make sure that this bounding box goes into the right spot. So you're going to have to do a little bit of math. You're going to have to, like, figure out where the pivot is and be like, okay, well, the pivot is always, you know, one unit to the right and 3 units up from the bottom left-hand corner of our, you know, normal size collision box. So if you can't just easily do that math, you're going to have a really, really difficult time. This looks like -6. And then why don't we just try 0? That looks okay to me. And then we definitely want the collision box to be like on the bottom of him. Whoops. So put the collision box in the middle there. That's what I get for not being on frame 1. How do we keep each other updated? Hits loss, yeah, that's a good question. Basically, what we do is we use what's called version control for game development, and a lot of software engineering projects use that. And basically, how it works is, like, if this is me and this is Adam, we've got a central server here where basically Adam will check out files, kind of like a library, where he'll check out a couple files on his computer that he's working on. And if I'm using version control, which I am, like if I tried to take that same file that's over here, basically what happens is I get an error, or I get a little flag that says, "Hey, don't touch this file. It's being used right now." And that'll tell me, okay, I can't touch the level Adam's working on that level, and that's kind of the basis for it. And then basically I'll be working on some other assets over here, and then Adam can't touch those, and we check them in and check them out, and it's up to me to keep the code stable, and that's what we use. So we use Perforce for that, which is used in a lot of projects, especially game development ones where art assets are binary files. It works real well with them. So that's how we keep in sync, even though we're out of sync. So, yeah, a lot of people use all sorts of. There's tons of different version controls. Some of them work better than others for different projects. And I'm sure some people would say, like, you're using Perforce, that's so old school, it's so stupid. But it's working for us, so. It's kind of like, if you know the guys who made Project Zomboid, they weren't using version control for their stuff, and they had like a build of the game on their laptop, and their laptop got stolen out of like their hotel room, and they lost like a year's worth of work. Version control also is, like, this is Washington State, this is Australia, this server is over in Virginia, so this is hosted in Amazon, so there's like no way we're gonna lose our files. Like, to lose progress, we would have to, Washington State would have to get nuked, Australia would have to get nuked, and Virginia would have to be struck by multiple lightning bolts. And the chances of that happening all at the same time are probably less than me dying, like a shark coming and just like coming out of orbit and hitting me with its body and crushing me into the ground. There's probably more chance of that happening than all three of those events happening and us actually mattering that we lost the progress. So let's try to center this box. Let's before we position it, we should make sure it's the right size. So if Whitey is walking, where do we want him to actually hit the wall and not be able to walk any farther? And it's somewhere like there. So this is a little bit too wide, I think. What's a one width box look like? Yeah, I think I'd be happy with a one width box. No space sharks yet? Yeah, we're working on those. Again, I'm working on the wrong frame, aren't I? So it looks about the right size. So I'm manually entering the coordinates just to figure out where to position this box. I want to position it at... whenever I play this thing, I get screwed up. Is there a way to turn off auto keyframes or something like that? That's probably what I want. I'm not a harmony expert. It should be a little bit higher in the screen, so maybe we want like a 4.5 and then like a negative 11.5 kind of box for him. It should be a little bit. Because it's okay, I'm actually more looking at that back hoof than I am the forward hoof. So I think that's kind of what we want. So this is -1. Or is it a 0? Yeah. What would it take to be precisely aligned? And take a 0.9? Well, it's not the worst thing ever. Alright, so Bitey's box is going to be 1 width and 4.6 high, so it's going to be scale is 1 by 4.6, and the position for the box, the position for the pivot is at 0, -6. And the position for the box, the bounding box, is at -0.92, 11.6. And this is mainly for the physics box. The hitbox is different. Hitbox can be all over the place. The position, the physics box cannot, because the physics box is what we use to actually move the character. So if the physics box is moving all over the place, then people are going to get real confused real quick when they try to play the game. Alright, so if we've got this box here, then we're going to want to look at... We're going to see what are some good animations to look at for other boxes, because we want to make sure that he's at least... the pivot points are lined up properly with the bottom of the box. So I think we should look at crouch. So we're going to look at crouch, we're going to look at dash, we're going to look at the kind of like the climb up edge, we're going to want to look at the water, enter and exit. Those sorts of things. Slide, yeah, slide's a good one. The death animation is not nearly as important because, well, he's dead, right? You know, you're not going to be moving after you're dead, so making sure the physics box is set up properly is not super important. Yeah. Let's take a quick scan through the rest here, just yeah, the land is a good one to look at too. Land and impact, yeah. Okay, yeah, the crouched itself also is going to be pretty important. Because this is what we're gonna be doing through logs if you're not sliding. And that's pretty much one of the biggest places where we're actually gonna have a problem with collision. What is this? This is reclining or something? He's just getting up. Spidey's super bored, he just falls asleep. It's just like, I'm tired of this. Oh, these are recover animations. Wham! It's like a ninja. It's like zombie Bitey. That's pretty awesome. It comes out like Swamp Thing. Bitey doesn't know how to dive properly. He's too floaty. Alright, so it's water enter. Just, he gets sucked into the void. Alright. That's the exit. Well, that's an interesting thing to think about, is that the water, is the edge of the water going to be a ramp, or is it going to be just a wall? Because this looks more like a ramp. You know, he's kind of walking up and out of a creek. What is that? What is he doing? Unstick? Huh. He's hanging on to something? Alright. So yeah, we're gonna look at crouch. So we're gonna look at this pivot. So we put the pivot at 0, -6. Then we put these boxes, -29.2, -11.6, and we just do a 1, 1.6. See, the big problem here is he gets a lot fatter on the screen. So if he's up against a wall or something like that, it's kind of a big problem. Because basically, like, imagine we got Bitey here, and there's a wall right next to him. Like, you know, the wall is literally right here, because that's his physics box. So he'd be right there, and then, you know, his crouch animation is gonna move him, kind of so his head is like in the wall or something, which isn't good. So one of the things we could do is kind of move him back. So like if we had maybe on this frame, like if we take this over by 4, like 3.5. Let's see, 3. .92 plus 3 is 3.92. So that's 2.08. 2.08. So if we move them there. Thank you for following Africa 93. We're working on basically trying to figure out exactly how to rig this character up. And kind of if what we did was we moved his physics box and his pivot over here, right? Like if he was right up against the wall, he kind of his animation's still gonna play, but he's gonna move kind of, his butt's gonna move off to the left when he does it, so we would effectively move him to the left as he's doing this, which really doesn't seem to be what we want. At least we don't want to move him too far. So maybe if we did a 1.08. So if we didn't move him too far, probably look okay. Well, we'll just have to see how it actually looks in the game. But I think this sort of motion would probably work. And this guy needs to be a lot shorter. Maybe like a 1.5. So like, the question would be, is 2 a better representation? I think 1.5 probably works better. So why don't we do that? So the scale of small crouched box should be 1 by 1.5. This would be what, 2.08? What? No, this one, 1.5. So 11.6, and then this is 2.08. 1.08. Alright. That's good. Is the purple box the hit box? Yeah. So we got 2 boxes, the hit box, which is the box that you can get hit with, and the physics box, which is the box you move around with. So I'm just positioning them basically right on top of each other. Because right now it's more important for us to get the physics box stuff proper, and then once the physics box stuff is all done, then we can mess around with the hitboxes, which are not as important for the core game in movement, which is what we were trying to get right now. We're trying to get, you running and jumping and moving around, and we'll get you actually getting hit by, enemies and thorns and brambles and all the fun stuff. After we get movement set up, you got to move into stuff and be able to run around to do the rest. So this should be at 1 by 4.6 and should be at negative 1.6 and negative 0.92. So this is actually a lot of what game development is tediously entering numbers and doing stuff like that, to be honest. So, and then we're going to take off our stop motion keyframes, and what we actually want is this pivot needs to be a motion keyframe. And if we have a motion keyframe here, basically we need the position of these guys to move properly with the pivot, but we don't want the scale of them to move with the pivot, which is obnoxious. So we do want a motion keyframe, but we don't want it to do anything except the motion of the objects. I don't even know if you can do that in Harmony. I went to college for game development, and then I worked in the industry for 8 years. Can we even do this with Harmony? Like, I don't wanna dynamically scale this thing. What I want to do is, you can see the pivot is nicely, smoothly moving. But I want to change the physics box to the small physics box. I want to do that kind of halfway through. But I don't want to change the scale of the physics box every frame. You know, make it, because if these are, you know, motion keyframes, then what happens is this hitbox changes every single frame, and in the game engine, it's going to have to recalculate the physics for the actual object every single frame, right? Versus just having the box. So what I'd want the translation to be keyed, but I wouldn't want the scale to be keyed. And the question is, can I pop these guys open down here and actually do this? Yeah, I tried that just before, but I need the translation to move relative to the pivot identically every single frame. Otherwise, it's going to be a different physics box to the game regardless, because it'll be like, oh, well, it's the same size of box, but now it's at 0.1x relative to the origin and stuff like that. So we need to take the scales, which are these three guys, and we need to set them to these guys, and then we need to have them move back to about there. Yeah, so I guess we can do it. So in this way, what we can do is we can have the character, we can have those hitboxes move, but then they swap to the correct size only halfway through. So if you're wondering how to do that, you pop open the different layers, and then you can adjust the keyframes from there. So really what I'm looking at is, I'm not looking at the actual motion of that box, I'm looking at it relative to the pivot, which is what really matters. So, yeah, we got that sorted out. So we got the crouch. And let's take a look at crouched. So this was at, is this at 2? Literally at 2? Alright. Pivot at crouch. It's 2. And then 6. Scale, and then the position box at crouch. 0.08, 1.08, and 11.6. This is 11.6. Yeah, and a lot of the problems that, you know, come from a lot of this is that Harmony is working in animation units and stuff like that, as opposed to, you know, it's like using coordinates like north, west, south, and east instead of positive and negative axes. You know, obviously meant to be more friendly to the regular person and less friendly to more technical engineering sort of stuff, which Well, their main customers are animators, so they're making the right decision. So let's go look at the other crouch. So the problem here is, if we change directions, it's going to flip us around by our pivot. So like, if I move the pivot over to where the other one is, at 2, negative 6. Was that where it was? Yeah, that's where it is. Then what happens when I actually... When we flip this guy, like when you turn left or right, he's actually going to flip around and his butt's going to move all the way. Used to do actual painting software. Yeah, it's because a lot of the painting software is made by engineers who think like I do. So a lot of stuff I would imagine you'd find use kind of the standard. So if we put this in the same spot, let's just take a look at it. Because a lot of this stuff is also like, I need to beat Adam over the head and be like, sprites in order to work properly for gameplay need to look like this. You can't do all that stuff. So I need to actually give him a few rules. Otherwise, how is he supposed to know which ones he can get angry at me at and ask to break? So I think we'll just go with that. We are going to have the issue when, you know, you flip him around, his butt's going to move from here to here and then potentially be in a wall, but we can always see how that looks. There's always a compromise between visual appeal and, you know, we can always have like a little animation there if we absolutely have to, where it's like go from left to right, where, you know, we have his butt move a little bit differently and it won't look wrong. Everything is so obscurely placed and named. Why is this one Adam's Mess and this one named Adam's Pot and this one is called Adam's Kettle and this one is called Mess 2? And it's like, well, which one was made first? Well, first I made Mess, then I made Pot, and then I was like, well, Kettle's like pot but not drugs, and then so I made that one, and then I was like, well, screw it, Mess made more sense, so we went back to that. Like, right, Adam, right. Alright, so we got the crouch. Let's take a look at the dash. So that should be like D idle. So let's look for D idle. Yes, the A diddle animation. So the question is, can we get away with a lot of the same stuff? Like, can we throw this at 0 and negative 6, and then can we change these boxes to 1 and 4.6, and then throw it at negative 0.92 and negative 11.6. And so while he's running real quick, basically, if Bitey runs into something, you'd see his head just embed into that thing. You know, if that was a wall right here that the blue box is going to run into, his head's just going to go right into that. Which I think is going to be real satisfying. Just going to wham! Run right into it, and we can have an animation where, you know, that's gonna look pretty good actually. So yeah, I think we'll be able to keep. We won't have to do another animation for this one. We'll just position our boxes properly. And if he stops just perfectly, you can, bend space and time and have your head go into the wall, but still not actually impact the wall. Spidey's like that. Yeah, I think Adam's got a head splatting thing. So we also want to look at the climb up edge. So I think that was like climb E or something. We were talking about like, child components, and then now we're talking about diddling, and it's just this whole development stream has got some really creepy undertones going on through it. So we need to climb. Let's take a look at the creep. Yeah, so creep might also need creep probably needs its own bounding box stuff here. So let's take a look at this real quick. Creep. So we'd want to place the pivot first, which would be at 0 and then -6. And then if we had to place this, let's put it at the same spot. Let's put it -0.92, -11.6, not 100.6, 11.6. And if we gave it the same scale as the normal box, it's that big, which we do not want. So let's see, if we made it like this big, that's like 3.1. Can we just make it 3? Yeah, we can. So let's just do that. So for creep, for regular / running, for crouch, for creep, see pivot is 0, -6, and scale is 1/3. Position is -0.92, -11.6. 1/3. Yes, consistent width is much more important than consistent height, and the reason for that is a lot of the game has to do with moving left and right, and moving left and right, if that bounding box changes at all, then we're going to have problems with, you change your animation, all of a sudden your width changes, and we'd have to like push you out of a wall or something. And height's a lot easier because, you're jumping all the time, so, if you run into a wall or something, you hit your head on the ceiling, that's not really a huge deal, because we'll at least be able to stop you at the right spot. And we're not changing our height very often, and only to certain extents, like, big Mario, small Mario sort of sizes. And we can always maybe go into a kind of a shorter animation if we need to. So we're kind of picking our battles. Like if we don't change the width of the character, then we can do a lot more with his height to change, what he's doing. But if that width changes, now we kind of lose some constraints, because if we're always guaranteed like he's the same width, then we can kind of cycle through some animations and see which one we might be able to play at the current position. And it's easier for Bitey to crouch down than it is for him to become skinnier a lot of the time. Just like a normal person, it's easier to It's easier to get low than it is to get thin. Alright, so this is 0.92, negative 11.6. Yeah. So we were looking for the climb up. Well, we can just go ahead and take a look at the slide. So if we use the same pivot as the crouch and everything like that, it would be like 0, negative 0.6. I mean, negative 6. If we did the same thing as the crouch, we are at like a 2. And then this is a 1.08, 11.6, and then we are 1 by 1.5. So you basically, like, if you were sliding, you're like sliding in to a log, and then like maybe at the end of the log, there's like a rock. You know, when your knee hits it, that's when your character would stop and turn into his crouch animation or something like that. I could get behind that. That's not awful. And a lot of this stuff we'll go back later and tune and change the animations. Spidey's gonna go through a lot of work. He's the whole game, to be honest. So I'm not worried about wasting too much in terms of you know, rigging him up, because these are all roughs anyway. So yeah, it looks like the crouch is the same as the slide. So crouch slash slide, use pretty much the same boxes. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. Now let's stick. Yeah, we're still looking for that climb animation. Where the hell is that? Throw, climb. All right, so here's climb. I'll be honest, I don't think this is the climb that we're gonna want. I imagine if we're gonna have Bitey climbing, he's gonna be doing more of a Mega Man X sort of climb. You know, where he's just climbing straight up a ladder like that, as opposed to climbing up vines or something like in a 3D game. Mainly because, like, if we were trying to communicate to a player what is climbable and what's not, the side of a rock is a lot harder to actually, I think, tell people that you can climb it versus, like, if there's literally, like, vines on a background, you got a lot more screen real estate to say, like, this is a ladder, idiot. You know? So what has he got here? He's got the pivot point set way down there, which is not what we want. We want the pivot point to be at the top. Is that it? This is going to be... This might not even be an animation we play, to be honest. Like, the situational use case of this is so small. But the pivot's gonna need to, yeah, the pivot's gonna need to be like, because we need to do these, like his position needs to not change pretty much. Like if he's actually doing it, I'm climbing up on a rock, we're pretty much gonna try to put his position where he's going to be. So yeah, his pivot needs to stay exactly where it should be. So what we should do is put the pivot, remove these frames. The pivot should stay at this like 0, -6. And then is he actually standing all the way up? Yeah, so he's standing all the way up. So we're gonna need to use this normal collision box, which is 1 by 4.6. And then like his hitbox, of course, would more follow along what Adam has right there. But I'm gonna simplify a lot of this stuff and just be dealing with what we got right now. And you might hear like me complain a lot about stuff Adam's doing and vice versa. And that's actually real healthy for us working on a game. Like, you should have the technical guy always being like, why can't you just make the character stand still? And you want the creative guy to always be like, well, I want to do all these crazy things. And that's real good. It means we should be at odds on a lot of things. And you know, we've talked about that. So we know all our bitching is just, it's supposed to happen. Oh man, that looks cool. So the other thing, so we got Clump Edge, we want to look at the water enter and exit stuff. Yeah, that's actually the whole point. You want that sort of energy, because if your designers or artists are always having to fit inside of a box, they start thinking only in terms of that box, and then like your game sucks, because then you're basically shipping a spreadsheet. And if your engineers are doing the opposite, if they're always trying to do all this crazy shit, then you never ship anything because you never finish anything. So it's always interesting on teams where you'd have some manager who's just like, I want everybody to get along. It'd be like, no, you don't. You want the lead designer and like the lead programmer to kind of hate each other. That's good. You don't want them to like actually like get into physical fistfights, but you don't want them being too comfortable with each other. So we need the water enter and exit stuff. So it looks like what's happening here is, again, we're having like a pivot move where, it's interesting. Yeah, we don't want him to actually enroll in Fight Club, we just want him to think about it.